So I'm here with Rochelle Kulei in her studio space in Vancouver, Washington. Rochelle is a painter and a member of the Northwestern Band of Shoshone, the Shoshone Nation.
Yes. So reason why there's Eastern Band Shoshone, there's Western Band, and then there's the Show Band. So we're like different clans, but still a Shoshone Nation, right?
Gotcha.
So how are you today?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm excited. Thank you for coming.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's really a treat to get to see an artist's studio space, because then not only do we get to see your work, we also get an idea of how you work. So that's very exciting for me.
Yeah.
So you had a quote you wanted to share today.
Yeah, it has a lot to do with my my art practice, and it's from Scott Momaday, and to encounter the sacred is to be alive at the deepest center of human existence. Sacred places are the truest definitions of the earth. They stand for the earth immediately and forever. They are flags and shields. If you would know the earth for what it really is, learn it through the sacred places.
That really is beautiful. And it does tie into what you're currently working on.
Yes.
Because you're working on representing landscapes, but not necessarily as landscapes.
Right. So in Yellowstone Park, I went there last year, wanted to take my own photos and not use other photographers' work. And also, that's where the Shoshone would do their ceremonies, their gatherings, and fishing during the summertime and hunting. And in the late 1800s, the president deemed it to be the national forest. And then they end up kicking out the tribes, the Shoshone tribes, and many other tribes that went to Yellowstone Park for ceremonies and gathering and hunting.
Yeah.
So I wanted to focus on the land, and I did my first piece, and it's not here with me, I should have brought it, but they have skulls in the water.
Oh, wow.
To represent, my ancestors. And then slowly I began to move away from that and wanted more about my connection to the land, and besides going there in person, but also then feeling like that there was a connection. And almost all my work is about connecting back to my roots and wanting to have more knowledge and seeking, I guess, a spiritual connection is what it's really about.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about Helen Frankenthaler, the abstract expressionist, and thinking about Georgia O'Keeffe's work, and I love their work and how they were able to express themselves, but there's some femininity in their work as well.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm doing here, is using the landscapes of the Yellowstone Park. And just trying to feel connected.
Yeah. And the landscapes, to me, there's something about the way you've handled the paint on the canvas. It almost feels alive, and it also feels very soft and tactile. I can feel, it seems like there is that femininity to it. Yeah. They're really beautiful. I'm looking forward to seeing how this evolves as you go.
Yes. I do have some smaller pieces. It's in my home because at nighttime I don't like being here late. So when I can't sleep, I want something to do. I have in my home, I have beadwork sized canvases, like the size, and I'm starting to do abstract beadwork of landscapes.
I'm looking forward to seeing that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then we are moving on as I keep working and progressing, trying to capture that, I guess, Mother Earth, capture the gentleness and the power she has, and trying to represent that in the connection I have with Mother Earth. I think that's why I was so drawn to Georgia O'Keeffe's work, because she loved the nature. She loved being a part of that and being in it as well.
Yeah.
And so I really studied a lot about Georgia O'Keeffe's work, but when I was making it, I wasn't intentionally I wasn't thinking about her work.
Yeah.
But then as I look at my work, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's some similarities.
There's some visual parallels for sure with
Yes.
your style and her style in these
Yes.
pieces. Yeah.
I love abstract, but I was in this place where I felt like, but is it Indian enough? Do I have to, because I'm Native, do I have to make Native work? But then as I realized I'm an artist, and there shouldn't be any boundaries. Like for any other artist, there shouldn't be any boundaries.
Yes.
It's whatever they want to express. So
Yes.
I decided to just let myself go, and I don't have to always make something that looks, Native.
Yeah, but you bring up a good point, and something that almost all Native artists that I've talked to struggle with, which is my artwork Indian art? Does being Native mean that my artwork has to be Native art? And do I have to make sure that that's overt? How much do I have to express that? How much does my artwork have to be a mouthpiece of my culture and my people?
Right.
And the answer is exactly what you've discovered is, you as a Native person will produce Native art regardless.
Right.
And it's got to be a true expression of you and your experience.
Yes.
So wherever that line is for whatever you're trying to express, it is what it is.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm excited about it. I feel like that's, as an artist, that's something we can do. It could be expressed in so many different ways, and as artists, not trying to, categorize me as a Native, but I could be an artist like everyone else does, expresses themselves.
Exactly.
So I like it all. I like painting, sculpture, and drawing, and I just don't want to. I want to be able to just express myself in whatever I might be thinking about. So.
Yeah. Now, this piece is really interesting to me. I'd like to hear what your source of inspiration was.
I am looking down at the piece, and this one, in fact, I didn't take myself, because this is from the drones that they've taken a camera and picture of, and then I just cut them off, pieces, so that I wouldn't totally appropriate their work, but then changed many things in the way I was expressing it. I lost my mother, and I've been thinking about ways how can I connect and be closer? And there's so many stories that medicine people could travel back and forth into the spirit world and back, and they'd come back with knowledge to help their people. And I was kind of doing that same thing, wanting to, how do I connect and raise, how do I say this? I don't know. I want to say consciousness. How do I get rid of the ego and then allow my potential self to move back and forth? And how did those medicine people do it?
Yeah.
I am a sun dancer and have knowledge of medicine and herbs and things like that. So I've been trying. This painting series is about that journey. Is how do I connect? How do I step aside and get into the spirit world?
Yeah. That makes
a lifetime.
Yeah. Getting closer to that spirituality.
In ways, it's like the eye and that portal for me. There's a portal that you step in, and you might have that possibility. Might be have that ability to cross over and visit the spirit world, and that's what Sundance is all about too. Yeah. So, connecting.
Yeah. It definitely seems like it could possibly be a liminal space, a space for transfer between places.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had this vision one time, and I saw myself traveling through portals and stars and through space. And so I feel like this is something that I'm trying to portray. It's not only about land, but it's further than that. It's more.
And it sounds like it's space somewhat redefined, not in terms of our usual concept of geography,
Right.
but space in a more of a spiritual sense as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like you're traveling through these different wormholes. These two are in the making. They're not finished yet, and I don't know when that will be. I usually feel when something's done,
Yeah.
or when I'm tired of it and I just put it away.
Yeah.
But there's still things that I feel like needs to be happening here, but I just let it sit for a while, and then I'll work on another painting and I'll go back and forth.
Yeah.
So that I can decide when it will be finished. We had this discussion about the community and how important for me, for the community to come in and to be involved in my work, because I have a hard time owning pieces that are mine. The word mine just feels very strange to me, and I like it to be ours.
Yeah.
So when I have a piece showing have it up, and the community comes, I invite them, but it's Rochelle's work, it's our work, and they get to own a part of that and say, I helped with this and I helped with that.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of artists that I know who do the same thing.
Yeah. And I feel like it's especially common with Indigenous artists because we are already naturally rooted in community, and then arts historically have been oftentimes a community-based process where it's not a single artist working on their single vision, but often they're collaborators in something that the whole tribe has helped out in, or a collection of artists within the community have helped out in.
Yes.
So I feel like that's in keeping with historic practices for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So I have this one piece back here, and I brought the community. had made dinner and we sat around my table, and everybody just came and went, and they knew I was having this project. So everybody would get a piece, and then they all started beading. And
the eyes
like,
here are
here's the
really
eyes.
beautiful.
Yeah. And so then when they go to the shows, then they could say, oh, I did this piece.
Yeah, they
and
can
I
see
did this
themselves in
piece.
it.
Yes.
I also really like these little stitch work pieces as well. I mean, it adds texture, but it also adds, it reminds you that there's different ways in which the artist or people can have made their mark here.
Right.
And that's another way of making your mark, is these wonderful little stitched bits and then this woven centerpiece here. It's really beautiful.
Thank you.
Now, you do a lot of work with cars.
I do.
And you've got some pieces of that in your studio here.
If I could have anything I wanted, I would actually have a huge garage, and I could work on car pieces. And my favorite part is disassembling them, taking out the motor, and the axles. Just taking apart was like it's most fun for me. And maybe it has to be like something like hunting, and you have to take out the guts and you have membranes, and maybe it is kind of like that similar type of thing, but in a contemporary time.
Yes.
That's my hunting.
I can see parallels for
my
sure.
carcass,
Yes.
So I've been collecting fenders, hubcaps, but I did have a show with these, and it was
I was going to say, this
inappropriate appropriation.
Yes, and I do really like this piece because it raises some really interesting questions about cultural appropriation.
Yes.
And can you speak a little bit about your...
So in the show, Inappropriate Appropriation, there were about 4 or 5 artists that were asked to make a piece according to their culture. So I was thinking about the law that was just passed in Oregon a couple years ago about getting rid of the old mascots. And so that's where I decided to paint mascots on the hubcaps.
Yeah, I really do love the piece. And I also, I love the title. It does raise the question, is there such a thing as an appropriate appropriation?
That's a good question. I was thinking, if people just ask first, go to the members of the tribe, go to not just one native, because we all have different opinions, but go to organizations and get permission, ask before you just assume that it's okay. I used to work for the Native Education Program here in Vancouver. And there was in high school, I don't remember which high school, but every year they did the same native chief, which was always Plains Indians, in which we're in the coastal tribe, right? We're amongst them. And she went to the president or the principal and asked if she could appropriate a correct chief that belonged into this northwest region, and then went to some tribes and found out I don't remember which chief they used, but it was appropriate to use another chief and honor that person.
And that's a really beautiful story.
I think it's going out, just ask first before you just don't assume.
And also find ways in which that can bring people together and give voices to Native people rather than obscure the actual culture that's there with what you assume should be there, or your own interpretation of what you think Native culture is about.
Right. Last year I got to go to a grade school, and I usually do educational assemblies. And this one in particular, they traditionally did a potlatch, the whole school.
Oh, wow.
But the principal would come out with a war bonnet on.
Oh,
yes.
That's very inappropriate.
and then the parents would give their child an Indian name, like Running Bear, and they just would make up names, right? And we know for us, it's a ceremony that it takes prayer and time.
And oftentimes a certain member of the community is the one who gives the name, not just the parents or whoever feels like they want to.
But what was beautiful about this whole thing was this one particular teacher knew this, the protocols, because her father worked for the tribes in Umatilla. And so she said, I know this isn't right, so what should we do? And they asked me, is it okay for the principal to wear a chief bonnet? And I'm like, absolutely not. Not even I get to wear one. Not many of us get to wear one.
Not the right tribe, so many problems.
So the principal was new, and when she told him about the tradition, he was even aware, like, absolutely not, I'm not wearing a bonnet. So he was even, culturally aware of what was not appropriate. And then as far as the names, I told her that it'd be more important if the parents told their children the meaning of their own names, where they come from, whose names did you take, So just trying to make people aware that we're still here. You're still here.
Yes, we're both still here.
And that we live just like they do in modern times, but we also have culture that makes a difference. So anyway, that to me is the appropriate way to ask. Don't assume. So when I grew up, I didn't have the privilege of hearing stories that my mother grew up with. My great-grandfather would gather around the floor, and then he would share stories with them. But my mother never shared that. None of us actually got to share the stories, have those stories shared with us. And my aunt, my great aunt, she passed away a couple of years ago, but before that, she wrote down all the stories and she gave them to me. So she's like, Rochelle, do something with this. I'm like, okay, Auntie. And so I was trying to figure out a contemporary way to tell a story, but not on a book or something, but maybe on fenders or cars. And that's what I was did with a car piece that I did. But I started experimenting. So I started working on car pieces and always wanted to learn how to spray paint, and I love the graffiti artwork.
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to play with that idea too.
Yeah, well, it's beautiful. I really love what you've done with this. The more I look at it, the more I want to look, because there's so much here, and you can tell that there is a story here, but you don't quite know what it is, which makes you even more curious.
Yeah.
It just draws you in.
And then this is Bia Bungo, which means big horse. And so I was thinking about auto theft and how we would mark our horses. And this is actually a Mustang fender too.
Even better.
Yeah. So I was thinking about, my mark, my hand, and then my fingerprints, so that if anybody stole it, my fingerprints were on it. No one could take it. It's mine.
Yep.
And so I then made this post, and it was in a show, and I can't remember what show that was, but it was a Western theme, and I thought, well, if it's going to be a Western, I'm going to, of course, put an Indian in there, right? So I did this piece, and then I did this marionette that was hanging from the ceiling, representing, that marionette, how we're told what we should be, and how we're supposed to live, and what reservation are we supposed to be on, and so forth. So I made this marionette that was about near this piece.
I like that.
Yeah. And then this is part of the car piece that I did.
With the stretched height over the top of it?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is great.
And the hood. And
Can I
yes,
touch?
you can touch it. Yes.
So yeah, this is a hood. Okay, I see
Yeah.
now. Yeah. Is this the complete piece, or is
That's
this...
the piece that goes onto the car, which is in a storage right now. And this is where the story is. It's about the coyote who wants to learn how to fly. He observes all the geese and asks the main leader if he could have this gift. And they decide and said, okay, we'll give you this gift. You can fly. So he was so excited. He was able to show them how he could dig, and he was practicing flying, and pretty soon he's flying with the geese. And they tell him to only fly in the center of them so that nobody would notice him. But he had a weakness as he flew, as they were flying. He has a weakness of women. And so it goes down, and they're traveling, and then the geese is saying, cousin, we're going to come across a village, and you know what your weakness is. You promise you will not howl. And he says, I promise I won't howl. And here's the village, and the people are swimming, and people are playing with their dogs. And then he looks and sees a woman in the lake, and he starts to howl, oh! And the geese says, cousin, I told you not to howl. And he tumbles and tumbles and tumbles and falls into a swamp. And then the people ran to see what happened, and they knew they wouldn't believe his story, that he had this opportunity to fly, and he had to lie, and he told them that he was up in the tree trying to get a bird, and he fell. But the story of it is that when we are gifted a rare gift, and we shouldn't take advantage of that gift. We need to appreciate it. But if you don't appreciate it, sometimes it can be taken from you, and you may never get that back. Yeah. So I love that story.
It's a good story.
And that's one of the stories that my aunt wrote.
I was wondering if it was one of those. Yeah.
Yes. So I decided to, because I sew a lot, I have a lot of nieces and my daughters, I make, a lot of regalia, and they're fancy shawls. So I decided to kind of like create that same thing, like make it sparkly and bright, and do that same thing in the applique.
Yeah, and it really captures your attention. From across the room, I wanted to come over and take a closer look because it does have that shine and that brightness,
Yes.
and really makes you want to know, well, what's going on? Because you
Yes.
can tell that there's a story
Yes,
here.
yes.
Yeah.
I had an interview once, and it was Jean Quick-to-See Smith, and she came here. The faculty surprised me and brought her here, and I got to spend half the day with her.
Oh, I'm
it was the
envious.
most amazing experience. I just appreciate and respect her so much in her work. She told me to do something like this, but do it in an abstract, like be a futurism. So.
Well, if you do that, if you do this in a more abstract way, I'd like to see that too.
Yeah, there's so many projects. I have a list over there on my board of all the things I want to do that come to my mind, and I write them down.
So what's your biggest dream project? What would be the one that you would do if
The
you only
one
got
that-
one opportunity?
The one I really want to do is I want to focus on the missing Indigenous women.
Yes.
And I was in Vermont in a residency, and I met a woman, she was a poet, and she didn't focus on Indigenous women, but she focused on missing women that never was claimed in a missing bodies, and nobody claimed these women, and so she wrote poems for them, and in honoring them, and as if she knew them, to honor them. So what I see is that, you know, those silk ribbons, the acrobats, you know, the dancers use those silk ribbons, you know,
Yeah,
the
aerial
the
acrobatics, yeah.
I envision a space with like 6 of those. And then at the bottom of them, though, I want to create body bags, and it will represent each Indigenous woman. And when a clock ticks, their body, they would move. Ooh. And then they would crawl out, and then they'd enter into those silk materials, and they will like be in a cocoon and then dance and make movement, and then eventually ascend into the spirit world.
Wow.
That's what I want to do.
That would be so beautiful
Yeah.
and eerie and profound all at the same time. I hope you do get to do that.
I want to do that. I hope to do that. I'm looking for some funding for that. So, my mother went to school when I was a young girl, and I always remembered how important education was to her. And so I decided, when it was time, I knew I was going to go to college, but I didn't know what I was going to do. And so, you know, everybody's saying, Rochelle, you're a nurturer. You should be a nurse. So I'm like, I like science. I'll be a nurse. And so I went all the way into my junior year into nursing school and realized I don't want to be a nurse. So then I ended up getting married, and not ended up, but I did get married. It was a good thing. And then had a family, and because of historical trauma, there were some things I just wanted to change cycles, you know, break cycles in our in our family lifestyle. I used to think it was just me who had problems as Native, like it was our only family. But I realized that it's the same stories of alcoholics and, you know, and just lots of poverty. And I wanted to make a change. And so I knew through my mom's example, that's how it was going to happen. So I went back to school. So the thing is that I wanted to raise my children first. And once the youngest one was, I think in first or second grade, then I decided to start taking classes. So I'm in my middle 30s, maybe late 30s. Yeah, late 30s. And I had this dream. And in this dream, I had it like a spirit guide. And I am with the spirit, but I see myself in the middle of this room, and I'm walking around in and out, just weaving. And then I ask the spirit, what am I doing? And it tells me, oh, you're helping people heal. And I said, oh, well, what is everyone doing? And then I had to get closer, and then I realized everyone's painting. And I said, why are we painting? And it told me, this is what you need to be doing. This is your gift. You haven't discovered yet. And, you know, as when you are in poverty, living in poverty, my mother was a single mom. She didn't have time. That was a privilege or honor to kind of hone in your children's gifts. But she was trying to put bread on the table, you know, keep us clothed and so forth. So no one really paid attention to what my talents were. And I didn't even know. So it wasn't until my late 30s and I had that dream and I woke up and I thought, oh my gosh, I know nothing about art. I've painted, I played with it when I was young and I enjoyed it, but I didn't know that was something I could be good at. And I started taking classes at the community colleges and just take one class at a time, and then pretty soon it's 2, then 3, and then I transferred to Marylhurst University and then got my BFA there, and I was amazed how quickly I picked up the pieces and just connected real quick. And then from there I took a year off, and then I applied at Portland State University because that's the only place that is local to get your MFA. And luckily I was accepted. So then I went there for a couple years and then ended up at PCC in a diversity training for internship, and then started.
And along with creating artwork, you also teach people to paint.
Yes. I love it. But I think that it's so important that students need to know that you don't have to be young, or you don't have. Lots of students that I've taught haven't been doing it since they were children, and they're really, really good. But you don't have to have this long history of being an artist. You can start at any time. Anybody can do it. It's just having someone be patient with you, and just being patient, really being patient with yourself, and being kind, and not afraid, intimidated by new work, and experimenting with all sorts of genres.
And finding your voice.
Yes. So, and that's how I got into art.
That's wonderful.
So pay attention to dreams.
Yes, most definitely.
And that's all I get. That's how I got into art. And I really have a firm belief that you just live in a good way. You do your best and try hard, but you really don't have to try super hard. That things just open up for you, and where you need to be, it happens. Yes.
Well, thank you for sharing your wonderful studio space and sharing your thoughts and your beautiful artwork with me today.
Thank you. I appreciate it.